Hello and welcome to the Team Conti Sim Performance track guide for season 1 of 2024. We're heading into week 9 at Long Beach Circuit in Long Beach, California. This is a first for the NASCAR Class A Cup Series on iRacing as far as visiting Long Beach. So super excited to get to a different venue. This place, although it's a street circuit and it shares a lot of commonalities with the Chicago circuit we visited last year, there are still a lot of things that make Long Beach unique. Obviously, corner-wise, all of the corners are laid out quite a bit differently than Chicago, but just some of the technique stuff is a bit different too. So unlike some of our other track guides from this season where I run through a 30-lap run from inside the car only and just really talk about things as they go, I wanted to really dive a little bit deeper into some of the methodology behind what I'm doing behind the wheel over the course of just one lap. And the reasoning for that is on the road courses, the tires do not wear out like they do on the intermediates and the short tracks and all of the other ovals that we visit. So actually, you go faster and faster and faster as the fuel load burns off. So there's really not a need to go through a full fuel run. But there's definitely a need to break this down a little bit more than we typically do. We'll go outside the car, inside the car, really spot braking zones, take a deeper dive into the inputs and what I'm doing there, and just give a really in-depth explanation into everything that goes into one lap, which is quite a bit. So I'll be stopping and starting quite a bit throughout the next few minutes. So come along for the ride and let's take a lap around Long Beach. So this is me preparing to take my first timed lap here, and there is definitely some speed in how you approach the final corner. Typically in the final corner, as we'll see when we actually get onto the lap, you're braking very early and you're hugging this inside wall very closely to get that really good rotation, straighten it out, and get a straight shot up onto the front stretch. When you're coming to take your qualifying lap, for instance, you'll probably want to widen this approach out, slow down the center more, but get yourself a really good run off the exit of the final turn so that you're coming to the start finish line with as much speed as possible. You'll see here as we play this, this is more of a regular approach to the final corner where I'm just almost clipping that inside curbing. But again, for your hot lap or your qualifying lap, you'll probably want to drive the car out to about here, follow the mouse, really stop it in the center, straighten it out, and get the power down and carry a lot of speed off of the final turn to take your first lap. But this is more of a race lap, so we're just coming through that final turn in a very common sort of way, coming down the front stretch here. Now this kink in the front stretch, it's not even labeled as any type of corner. This isn't like turn one or anything, but this is definitely a kink, and you will feel the car slip the rear quite a bit as the tires are cold and not up to pressure. So really be mindful of how aggressively you're pinching the car to the inside wall through here. Lap one, two, three, you can definitely feel, like I said, that rear trying to come out. So just make sure you're aware of that. And as long as you are, you shouldn't really have any problems. But yeah, if you went through here for the first time and you didn't know that that could be an issue, I could definitely see how you might lose the car on the exit of the kink down the front stretch. Shifting up to fifth gear down the front here, hugging that wall as tightly as possible without really overslipping the rear. And then we'll start to slow it down. So heading into turn one, you've got you got a lot of markers that you can use to try to pick a breaking point, but there's almost so much going on here that it could get a little bit overwhelming. So let's try to look at only one or two things. So the pit out curbing right here is a good indicator of when you're approaching your initial lift point in your brake zone. So as soon as you spot that from inside the car, so back it up a little bit. So here I am going down the front stretch. As soon as I start to spot that pit out curbing, I know that I'm approaching the braking zone. I'm not going to brake at the start of the pit out curbing, but I'm getting my mind around the fact that, okay, I need to start lifting and finding the brake. So breaking this down frame by frame, we're going to pass the beginning of the pit out curbing, still full throttle. Mind you, I'm already starting to make my approach back to the right side of the track so I can get my angle and my line where it needs to be going into the first left-hander, which is turn one. So still not braking, but still bringing it back over to the right side. Still full throttle. Initial lift is well before the end of the pit out curbing. Okay. Initial lift is probably, call it 1, 2, maybe 3.5, 4 car lengths before the end of the curbing. That initial lift is quick, and I'm engaging the brake right at the beginning or right at this blue dashed line that runs perpendicular to the front stretch. When you're inside the car, you're really not going to be able to see that line. But when you're about 2 to 2.5 car lengths away from the end of that curbing, that's going to be your cue to start engaging the brake. I think that's the simplest braking marker you can have from inside the car is probably 2 to 3 car lengths away from the end of the curbing. So fast forwarding a little bit here, pay close attention to the braking. So all of the high-speed braking at this place, we're going to be using the threshold braking technique, which is unique to road courses, but maybe we do this at some short tracks too, but we don't really dive deep into it. So threshold braking essentially is using the max brake pressure allowable for as long as possible without locking up either the front or the rear tires. Now, how that differs from what we typically do on the ovals is usually on the ovals, we find our max brake pressure early on in the entry phase, and then we slowly start to taper off before we free roll into the center of the corner. Here, there's going to be a lot more movement in the brake pressure, plus or minus, just depending on the feedback that I'm getting through the wheel and my pedal rumblers, both of which are telling me if I'm starting to lock or slip tires. So unlike ovals, whereas we hit the max brake pressure and come off of it, you'll see in a lot of the high speed braking zones that the brake pressure is going to fluctuate plus or minus just a little bit. So going frame by frame here, we're approaching about 50-ish% brake early on in the braking zone, downshifting to fourth. And there you can see, so as soon as I downshifted to fourth, I felt like I could use more brake to help slow the car down. I wasn't sensing any slip. So I actually induced a little bit more brake there. And I'm still increasing brake as I approach the entry of turn one. That is quintessential threshold braking right there, using max brake pressure without slipping tires. So there's your third gear downshift, still heavy on the brakes, 60 to 70% as I'm approaching turn one. And as we get to this part of the entry, this is very important. So this is the pit out commitment line. So when you are exiting the pits, you cannot cross this double blue line. You have to merge at the end of the double blue line. In that same token, when you're making laps on the track, you cannot cross this line to the right of it to widen out your entry into turn one. You also cannot really cross the yellow line very much a little bit farther down the road here. If you cross this blue line, you will receive a slowdown penalty of about a second or so. So even though we would love to get the car all the way out to the right here to extend the entry into one, can't do that. So this line is basically a wall. Do not go over it with the tires. So you can see I'm going to hug that line as closely as possible, still carrying a lot of brake. As soon as I cross that line, I can use a little bit of the track to the right of the double yellow, but really can't use much of that at all. This is certainly flirting with a slowdown here still, but trying to use as much as possible. Still carrying a lot of brake into the entry. Already down to second gear at this point. And now I'm starting to turn in. So I'm turning off of that yellow line between the 200 marker and the 100 marker, so I can just clip the curbing here on the apex of turn one. Now we're starting to really come off the brake, and we're going to start to approach our max wheel lock. As we approach these apexes, we're going to give that little bit of an extra tug of the wheels, similar to what we talk about on the short tracks, to generate that good front rotation at the slowest part of the corner. Max wheel lock achieved at about the apex there, approaching 90 degrees left through turn one. As far as this curbing goes, it's a two-step curb. This is the flatter portion down here. This is a step above. You do not want to use the step up of the curb, because when you land off the curb, it'll bounce the car and you'll lose anything you gain by shortcutting the corner. So So again, quite a bit going on even into just turn one, and we still have plenty of corners to go. So moving through turn one here, we'll start to throttle up, keeping it in second gear all the way through this kink here, using as much track as possible to the right, partial throttle all the way through here. This is the fountain corner. It's called the fountain corner because there's a fountain here, if you couldn't tell. Already starting to brake well before the fountain. So just past the yellow signage on the right here, lift and brake. Going to downshift to first gear right there. You can see that with the throttle blip. Cut it as close to this inside wall as possible so you can straighten your approach to the fountain. Start cranking your wheel into it as you approach the fountain. And you're going to use all of the red and white curbing and then some of the step up with the concrete as well to help generate some rotation in the center. So we are past 90-degree wheel lock to the right. Climb that curbing just a bit, start using throttle, and aim to get the car straightened out so you can have a straight shot past this inside walling again at the exit of the fountain. In a perfect world, I would have been coming at about this angle right here. That way I'd be setting up my turn 4 over here a little bit nicer, because right now I'm going to come out of here, I'm angled toward this inside wall, so I'm going to have to point the car back to the left. It'd be much easier if at this point right here, if I could have been just a little bit further to the right, I could have straightened out this exit a little bit more, would have made my life easier on the approach to turn 4. Still though, no big deal. Come out of the throttle a little bit, get this thing back to the left as quickly as possible, use up all of that track to the left, and then we're going to start lifting and braking right before this curved white line here of whatever this road marking is. Still in second gear all the way through here. 35% max brake pressure or so, and then slowly tapering off. Again, we've got our two-step curb, not using the higher step, using the lower step. Approaching 90-degree wheel to the right through the center, that extra tug. Come off of there and approach turn 5. Very, very easy to slip the rear out and slap the wall with the left rear. So you're going to see just a lot of partial throttle here all the way through the straightaway as I walk it out to the fence. Still partial throttle. Just maybe getting to full. Nope, not even full throttle at any point in this shoot between 4 and 5. Widening out the approach as much as possible by hugging as close to the left as possible. And about 35% brake or so. Going to try to use as much of this inside curbing as possible. This first step of curbing right here is generally fairly easy to use. The car is pretty compliant when it lands off of it. It's a little bit trickier, but if you can use this inside curbing, it could potentially straighten out the exit and help you launch off with more speed. But at the same time, if you mess it up and you get a bad bounce off of there, you're definitely going to lose speed all the way down the straightaway before turn 6. So kind of to each their own with this one. But if you're not exactly comfortable with the car's doing, or if you're still new to Long Beach, I would recommend staying off these two inner curbs right here through turn 5. Very tricky on this exit as well, because you can kind of see from this angle. You can probably see a little bit better if we go right about here. You can see how the road crowns. So it loses banking as you get closer to these tire packs right here. So on the way out of the corner, you're really going to want to start to throttle up and use a bunch of throttle. But in doing so, you'll either lose the nose or you'll slip the rear, especially as you start to cross down the banking as it falls off. So really be aware of that as you're crossing the exit, and just understand that you are going to be lacking grip on the exit of turn 5 here. So just be careful with that throttle. The car really wants to fall away toward those tire packs, so it's important to not overshoot the center of turn 5 right there. You can see a lot of slip on exit with a lot of counter steer, just trying to get the car settled down. Mission here is to get the car all the way back over to the right before the approach to turn 6, which is a bit of a downhill approach, so we're going to be using a lot of brake here. Start braking about that 400 marker back there. Be careful as this wall cuts back in. turning in just past the 100, second gear for this turn as well. Cut it in as close as possible to that inside wall right there, and then hold it to the left. And a lot of cars around Long Beach, you really want to throttle up right here and drive across the exit, again, where the banking falls off toward the Acura signage. With this car, we're at a grip deficit here, so as you cross that negative banking toward the outside of this corner, you really will struggle to get it back to the left for the next right-hander. So my recommendation would be to really hug the inside of this corner, give a little bit of center speed up, but you will make it up in the fact that you won't spin the tires back across the track, and you'll also have a much nicer, cleaner approach into turn 8. So again, 90-degree wheel lock to the left through 6. Technically, this is turn 7 in here. It doesn't feel much like a turn, but on the track map, it's 7, so this is 7, basically a straightaway. Approaching turn 8, getting back to the left side of the track. Keeping it in second gear all the way through here. Do not upshift to third. Braking just before the 300 marker. Really slowing down this entry to shave off a lot of speed because this corner is very deceiving. So even though this curb is right here, you can cut in all the way up against the inside wall, and that's going to be the fastest way to go. That wall isn't exactly rounded. It cuts in a little bit past the center, so a later turn in, so you can miss that earliest part of the wall that jolts out a little bit toward you, is going to help because you're going to be able to utilize a little bit more track on the inside of turn 8, so you can power off of 8, get a lot of speed up before you clear the tire packs and get a good run down the backstretch. So our turn in is very late here. We're going to trail a lot of brake to help the nose turn. And as you can see, coming in here, still trailing brake, about 75-degree wheel, and cutting in as close as possible. Again, notice the angle of this wall. So it's angled out, and then it cuts back in really quickly. So you want to angle the car so that you're pointed toward this part of the wall and not this part of the wall right here. If your car is angled toward this part of the wall, you're going to be going straight toward the tire pack. If you angle this way, you'll clear the tire pack and have a lot of speed up off of turn 8. Get 90-degree wheel in the center of this. Watch your bouncing off the corner. It really wants to throw you out to the outside wall. Little correction right there. Now full throttle all the way down the back. Third. Fourth. Now we're spotting our braking zone. So our braking zone is either going to be slightly before the 5 or at the black asphalt patch. So let's see what we've got here. So going into the corner. Yep. So about 2 car lengths before the 5 and right before the asphalt patch, we begin to brake. Down to second gear right here, about 75% max brake pressure. Hug that wall as close as possible so you can extend your turn in and start turning in between the 200 and the 100. We're going to cut this inside curbing a little bit through what's turn 9 right here to help give us as much room as possible to make the exit. So use that inside curbing just a smidge. Lots of wheel in the center. The car really wants to jump out toward the left here, so be careful of that. All the way out to the Firestone wall, still in second gear. Brake to set up for this turn 10 here, which is this long sweeping corner. You can use a little bit of that inside curbing to help the rotation. Lots of free roll, little bits of throttle just to drive it through the center. Kick that back end out a little bit if need be. And then before the end of this second part of turn 10, we're going to start to straighten it out and brake. So brake, brake, brake. Get that wheel straight, and as soon as I'm straightened out, boom. There's my downshift to first. Threshold braking through here, reaching about 45-50% brake pressure. And then hand over hand steering. So I can cut in just about to this curb through turn 11 here, hand over hand. Really hand over hand. Just watch your throttle here. It's very easy to start to want to throttle up. But when you've got the wheel cranked that much, you're just going to go straight or you're going to lose the rear on exit. Make your exit, get that wheel straightened out as quickly as possible. Use all of the track to the left and really start to commit to that throttle as soon as you've got it straightened out. There you go, car straight, still in first gear. Lots of partial throttle through first. There's your shift to second, and then full throttle all the way through the end of the lap. So that's a deep dive into a lap at Long Beach. Now I'll go ahead and play it once at full speed from outside the car, once at full speed from inside the car. Heavy braking, use all of that track up to the blue lines for the pit out. Down to first into the fountain. Use that concrete to help you rotate. Up to second. Going through 4 and 5 right here. Here's turn 5. Use that inside curbing. Watch as that banking drops off. Up to third. Brake just before the 3, down to second. Really slow that center speed down and hug this inside. Do not cross the double yellow. Second gear. Late turn in with lots of trail braking. Cut that inside wall. Throttle up and head down the backstretch. Third gear. Fourth gear. Spot the black patch. Brake. Third. Second. Cut the inside curve a little bit. Watch as it throws you out to the left. Turn 10 right here. Hug it. Roll. Little throttle. Straighten it out. Down to first. Hand over hand. Nice straight exit. Launch up off the final corner to take the checkered flag for your lap. Okay, now one time from inside the car. Whoops. Cockpit. There we go. Give you a little different perspective on what you can and can't see when we're on the lap. A couple car lengths before the end of that curbing, heavy braking, down to second gear. Use the flatter part of the curb, just clip it there. Straighten this out, down to first. Big crank wheel in the center of the fountain. Up to second here, second through 4 and 5. Lots of partial throttle between 4 and 5. Get the power down off of 5, head down into 6 right here. It's downhill, so lots of brake before the 3. Second gear, do not cross the yellow. Keep it to the left. Braking just before the 3. Late turn in with lots of trail brake. Cut that inside wall. All the way down the back. Third. Fourth. Spot your black patch. Heavy brake. Third. Second. Widen out that entry. Cut the inside curbing. Out to the wall. Free rolling with a little bit of gas through 10. Straighten it out before 11. First gear. Lots of wheel. About 25 mile an hour minimum speed through there. All the way up off the corner and complete your lap. So Long Beach is definitely new for a lot of us, myself included. I've driven quite a few cars around here, but never a NextGen Cup car. So even though this car is a lot more similar to GT3 cars than it ever has been before, or maybe even like a V8 supercar, this thing is still very much its own beast. It's still very hard to get the power down. It's still very boat-ish in a sense that the front really doesn't want to work with the rear half the time, especially in the low-speed stuff. So take it slow at first. If you're new to this track or new to this combo, work up to it slowly. The braking is definitely going to be a point of contention this week. It's very easy to lock tires on cold tires or tires that are low on pressure. So give the thing a couple laps to come up to temperature and pressure before you start to cast judgment on it, whether it's this setup or fixed setup or whatever. And remember, your times are just going to get faster and faster throughout the run as the fuel burns off. So the car will probably drive its best at the end of the race, as long as you haven't been locking up tires or taking on damage or anything like that. Essentially, your best lap should be your last lap of the race. So that is our track guide for week 9 here of 2024 season 1. Happy to continue to do these and look forward to seeing what everybody can do at Long Beach this week. Definitely a tough combo, but certainly a fun one at that. So good luck in your racing. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.